Hi, I'm Valerie Engelhart, and in this video I am going to be painting another small 4x6 painting on hot press paper in preparation for gallery shows this winter for the Small Works shows. So if you've seen my previous videos, I've already talked about that plenty of times, so I'm just going to get going into what I'm doing right now. So I am doing a watercolor wash, and I'm just using whatever colors that are in my palette that I think look pretty. What I'm doing, I guess, would technically be fan art because I didn't come up with this design concept completely on my own. The colors are mine, but the little creature I'm going to paint is not. It is inspired by this little bug spirit thing in a manga called Toilet Bound Hanako-Kun. Now, don't let that name turn you off. There is a real urban legend about Hanako-san, and this book is kind of inspired by that. And it even catches the protagonist off guard in the very first book of being in the girl's bathroom, but Hanako-kun is a boy. It is charming. The art style is incredible. I love the line work, and the colors that the artist chooses is just awe-inspiring, and so I am trying to go for that more playful, saturated, colorful palette. Now that my wash is down, I did put some salt on for texture, and I'm putting on some cling film. This creature is a bug, and so it has wings coming out the side, and so I am using this cling film to give me the foundation for those wings. Now, this creature is of no importance whatsoever. If I didn't call out that this was from a book, I don't think any viewers would pick up on that because it's not important at all. But I loved the design of it, and it being a bug, it was perfect for doing on such a small piece of paper. And I like the playful contrast of lots of really pretty colors, but the subject is something eerie. This bug creature is found in number 6's boundary. So I'm going to avoid going too much into details because you probably don't have any background on what this story is even about. But to summarize, there is a land between the near shore and the far shore, between life and death. And one of the rulers of this boundary is number 6. There are 7 school mysteries. And this little bug creature is just a little demon. It doesn't really even do anything. We just sort of see that there's a scene where these little demon bugs show up. And I liked the way it looked. It looked eerie and unsettling, but easy to paint. And something that would just translate well, being a standalone piece of art without having any context of the story. Like by the end of this, you saw the thumbnail. You could just show it to someone and be like, oh yeah, that's some real creepy critter. You don't need to know that it's from a manga. And if you're not a manga reader, but you like watching TV, the anime just finished up its 2nd season. And again, they did a really great job of keeping with the art direction and the color palette. It is a feast for the eyes. I highly recommend it. So right now I have put the body in using Magic Wizard by Rockwell Art, one of my favorite colors, and then to give it form, I'm dotting in some lapis brown to create shadows, give it more of a 3-dimensionality. I'm using jagged brush strokes and dotting in color because I want this being to be kind of fuzzy like a bee. And in the center of its head is a single eye, so I am painting in that pupil in a slit like a cat, and going around the eye because the paint is still wet just to get some of those soft diffusions and bleeds. When I did that slit of a pupil, I left a little gap in the middle. That can be left there for shine or just visual interest. And I've taken more of that dark color and I'm painting in the stinger. So it is very much like a bee. It's like a little demon bee. And like most of my paintings, I did not sketch this out. I am just going for it and having fun. I even left some of the bee unpainted in that lower right corner for visual interest, lost and found, and That way I'm not giving all the information, but the brain fills it in. I'm using red now because red is just considered, like a scary, creepy color sometimes, often probably because it's associated with blood. And so I'm going around this creature's eye with the red. I'm giving it a red iris. But I still want there to be a lot of light and luminance to the eyes. I just use a different word. And so I'm leaving most of it unpainted. And now I'm just going in with the legs. I've got a size 3 Da Vinci Cosmo Top Spin. It is a synthetic brush, so it doesn't hold as much water, which is great for doing this kind of detail work. So on the left side of this bug, I'm having that leg be a little more transparent. So it's almost like fading away. I want this to be a very dreamy look. I mean, it's like this little scary creature, almost like what you would maybe see in a nightmare. So I want it to be dreamy and ethereal, but also spooky. And I just still get a kick out of doing little spooky things, but with really cheerful, pretty colors. Now, one thing I'm doing when I'm painting these legs is I'm painting on the color, and then I'm waiting a moment, letting it dry just a little bit, and then using a thirsty brush, so it's clean and I've dabbed off the excess water on a paper towel, and then I'm lifting some of that paint off the paper. And what that does is create a natural shine without using any gouache, and just adds more of that three-dimensional look. And because the bug's legs are fairly smooth, giving it a straight line lift like that helps illustrate that texture. A nice thing about the hot press paper is it does lift very well. And it's good to know your pigments, so I know that this dark pigment is one that lifts very easily. So by putting it down, letting it sit for a moment, and then going at it with a thirsty brush on hot press paper, because I've done this many times, I know the effect I'm going to get. And I like that the shine is the initial wash that I put on, so those colors still shine through. And this is just something that comes with a lot of practice. You can get hot press paper of any brand, but sometimes even brands with the same material mock-up will have different results. So sometimes it's just good to paint and paint and paint and paint and paint. So even though I know it's annoying to be told by other artists, like, well, you just need to get your brush miles in, you just need to practice, sometimes a lot of what we do is because we really know our materials. And how do you really get to know those materials? By painting a lot. And that's one of the great things about having such a small piece of paper, is I know that a lot of us have trouble with time. Like, we're so busy, there's so much to do, and we've got all of our responsibilities. When do you find time to paint? And it can be daunting to think of trying to do a big composition. And so just get a little piece of paper, just do a quick little bug guy. Now, I used red for the stripes because I wanted red to be in other places on this creature. Just having it at the eye is great for drawing that attention, but then doesn't have the cohesion with the rest of the animal. So I did put red for the stripes, and I'm using the Palaiba Diamond Blue to create more shadow because I have a little bit of Palaiba Diamond Blue in my background, and I want that reflected in my creature. And I do a lot of lifting, so even those red stripes, I put them in nice and dark, let them sit for a minute, and then I lifted them a bit. But because this part of the creature is fuzzy, I lifted it in like little dots, not in those smooth, straight lines. And I did glaze a little bit more of the red on the iris of the eye, just to give it a little differentiation from the white of the eye. But the value is still very light. All right, so these wings, I love being blingy, especially on these small pieces. So I've squeezed out a little bit of Daniel Smith pearlescent white, and I'm using a synthetic brush, and I'm using the texture marks from the cling film as a guide. It doesn't need to be exact, but I am starting to shape things, and I can't see it because it is like a translucent white on top of color, so I keep tilting my board, trying to see where I've already put color and if I've gotten the shape right. But I do want these wings to be nice and shimmery. And I don't want to do it after because I intend to use the lapis brown to do the line work. And as we've learned, lapis brown lifts very nicely, but because it lifts really easily, if I go and I start painting on top of it, I would disturb the pigment. I wouldn't have those crisp lines that I want to have. So it's important that I put my shimmer on first. But in order to see it, I do have to lift it so the light catches it, so I can actually see where I've placed it. Now that that's dry, I figured it needed a little more opacity, so I'm adding in some gouache. And I didn't really want to do this because the gouache is opaque and will cover up some of that lovely shimmer. But it wasn't standing out from the background as much as I wanted it to. So sometimes art catches you by surprise and you need to change course. A lot of people think that whenever you paint in watercolor, because it's so unforgiving, you can't make changes, but you can. You just have to be flexible. All right, now I've pulled out some gum arabic. And so gum arabic is often used as a binder for watercolor. It's what keeps the pigment together. But I just have some straight gum arabic that I'm using a synthetic brush that I do not care very much about to create a drip off the stinger. And the reason I'm doing that is I am going to grab some bronzing powder. And this stuff is messy, it will get everywhere. But I want to put it on top of that stinger so it looks like there's gold dripping off the end of that stinger. It is important that this dries naturally. I don't want to use a blow dryer because I don't want to spread that around. Be warned with the bronzing powder, this stuff. Now you want to be careful with this bronzing powder because even though it is beautiful, it is very messy. It does get everywhere. I am sprinkling a little bit that's still on my hands into the wings just for, again, more cohesion. And I love how sparkly this stuff is. But you do have to let it dry. So after it dried, I did use a fan brush to brush off the excess around the stinger. And now I'm going in and adding more of that Palaiba Diamond Blue in areas to deepen the shadows. I do want to call something out. I would recommend, if at all possible, to wait until the very end to do your bronzing powder. And that is because it is a loose powder. And I didn't want to spray a fixative because it's watercolor and this powder gets everywhere and it lifts. So if you paint on top of it, like I'm doing here, even though I'm using a brush that I don't really care about and outlining the wings in the anticipation of picking up color, if I go back into my palette, like I'm doing now with the chance of the powder getting on my brush, I am contaminating that well with the bronzing powder, which is not ideal. So really, if you can help it and you want to do bronzing powder, do it at the end. Because not only have I contaminated my well, which I do clean out later, but it was a pain and unnecessary if I had just had a little forethought, but my water container is also contaminated. Because if I get that powder on my brush and then I rinse off my brush, well, then those little particles are floating in my water and are easily picked up. So the other lesson is have more than one water container, which I do have, but my daughter took it from me and it's become hers. So I guess I'll just need to go get a different cup. For such a small painting, I pulled out a lot of different brushes, and for all of the different brushes I use, they are all round brushes or liner brushes, which are like a round brush, just a little longer. But right now, all of the marks that I'm putting in, I am looking at my reference image, which was just like an introductory page in the manga that I had from the library at the time, and I'm just following those lines. Painting them in. I'm letting my brush be a little raggedy because I want those lines to be irregular and jagged. And just for reference, I have sped this video up to like 200%, because if we watched me do this stroke by stroke, it would take about an hour. I just wanted to let you know so you didn't think that you have to paint that fast. All right, so now that that's done, I did pull out one of my stencils and I wanted to just see how it would work if I grabbed one of my makeup sponges that I bought purely for art. And I'm going into some Daniel Smith Iridescent Aztec Gold because it's my favorite like golden watercolor. And I figured maybe if I went in pretty dry, I could stamp. And spoiler alert, it doesn't really work very well. This would be much better for maybe gouache or acrylic. But I just wanted to try it and see what happened. And that's a big part of art, is experimentation, seeing what works and what doesn't. This falls under the doesn't. But it still made a nice little dreamy effect, so I left it in. Plus, if I tried to remove it, I would have the risk of lifting the wash underneath. And so sometimes you have to think, like, even if there's something that maybe didn't turn out the way you like, and you technically could remove it, it might be better just to leave it. Your viewer probably would never have known any different, but if you try to remove it and disturb your initial layer, it will draw attention and make it look like a mistake. And then since I paint on a block, I use a palette knife to remove it. Cutting off the ends, and look at that shimmer. And here's the finished painting. So if you liked this video, press that like button so I know to make more like this. And if you want to see more, subscribe, because I make videos every Monday and Thursday. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye!